Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Huawei FusionSolar Roundtable. My name is Lisa Connors and I'm going to be the host of the session today. Now, this afternoon, we're not only going to be hearing from Huawei personnel, but also from industry experts. And we hope that you find the session really informative and of value to you and your business. But I'm delighted to have our CEO, Mr. Hudson Liu, here this afternoon. Hudson is going to provide a brief overview of our business. So thank you, Hudson.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for joining our roundtable discussion. And so climate change is always a hot topic, and which is also very complicated. And because everybody, we understand that we need to adopt more clean energy into our power grid, but we also need to keep the balance between the cost, the economy, and reliabilities. So that is the challenges also we are facing. But look at the Australian market. So you have the most beautiful sunshine, and you have a very high penetration on the rooftop. So I believe that in the Australian market, we have more opportunities than the challenges that we have faced. And if we take some time to talk about Huawei, I think thanks to the Donald Trump, so make Huawei as very famous brand, and probably most of the people know Huawei because Huawei have the leading technology on 5G or smartphone. But you may not know that Huawei is also the #1 suppliers in the solar inverter business. So why Huawei can be the #1 in the solar inverter business? So I just give very simple explanation or the analysis. The first one is actually Huawei core business is still our radio BTS business. So we deploy our BTS in more than 170 countries, not only in the city, but also in the very remote rural areas, which lack of a power supply. So we have to maintain our BTS with a stable power supply. So how to facilitate the power supply? So while we have to design the power supply by ourselves, sometimes we need inverter. And in those remote areas, so the environment is harsh. Some areas is very hot, some areas is very cold, humid, or with a lot of dust. So we need to make sure our power supply and the inverter can be adapted to those harsh environments. So that means that our products is right for the different kind of scenarios for the environment. And the second is Huawei have a full range of products line, not only for the inverter. So when we enter this new industry, we can introduce the cross technologies into the inverter business. So for example, for the digitalizations, so for some materials can prevent erosion, can prevent fast heat dissipations. So those kind of technologies can make the unique differentiation and competitiveness to make Huawei be better than the traditional players in the inverter industry. And the last point is thanks to the China market. For our home market, for the domestic market, that market volume is huge. So we have the big market share in China market. So that means we can take the benefit of the volume of the scale. And then Huawei can keep massive investment on the R&D, on the counter control, on the supply chain, and all the after-sales services. So for the overall process for the inverter, so which is also the unique value to compare with traditional players. They only have a solar business, but we have a very big market volume. We have our domestic market basis, and we have across technologies. So that is the key factors that to make sure Huawei can keep the #1 position in this market. So today, the roundtable will have a lot of valuable discussions, and I hope these discussions can bring you all with the inspirations. And thanks again to join today's roundtable discussion.
Thank you. Thanks, Hudson, for your insights. I think it's worthwhile mentioning here that Huawei has actually been operating in Australia for 16 years. We've had a successful business, and as you said, we have the big backing of the global entity that is Huawei, and that R&D power behind us. But we also realise that we wouldn't be able to have such a successful business without our partners, and we're committed to continuing to work with our partners for the long term. We realise that for us to be successful, we need our partners to be successful. And it reminds me of an African proverb that I heard recently, that if you want to run fast, you run alone. But if you want to run far, you run together. And I think that is definitely good ethos for Huawei. Again, thank you, Hudson, for your time. So moving along, it wouldn't be a Huawei event without a lucky draw. Now, we're here virtually today, so we're going to be facilitating our lucky draw via virtually. You will see at the top of your screen there is a red bar, and that houses a link to a brief survey that we would ask you to complete. So once you've completed the survey, you're going to automatically go into the draw, but you need to be here at the end of this session to be eligible as well. So complete the survey, and then make sure that you stay to the end. We're actually going to give you some time to do that now before we get started. So please take some time now to complete that survey. And while we're doing that, I'm going to be the on hold music while you do that, and give you a little bit more detail about the fabulous prize that we have on offer today, which is the Watch GT. Worth noting, it is compatible with Android and iOS platforms. It is perfect for counting steps and monitoring any of your physical activities. So we've got a couple of mountain bikers here, so perhaps we can we can talk offline about some watches there. There are multiple sports modes, so we are covered for all of your indoor and outdoor activities. The Watch GT supports 3 satellite positioning systems. Who knew? GPS, GLONASS and Galileo, which of course gives you more accuracy. And after a day on the run, its intelligent sleep statistics identify some common related sleep issues. So after your active day out and about, we're able to suggest some effective sleeping measures for you to recover and get ready for the next day ahead. So I think that is about a minute. Am I right in saying that? So I am now going to move along to the business of the roundtable. We have allocated some time at the end for some formal Q&A. However, we do want to make this as interactive as possible. So we really do encourage you to use the Q&A functionality in the website. And we really encourage you to use that and get involved. We will try and answer as many questions as we can, maintaining the flow of the discussion, of course. So without further ado, I am absolutely delighted to introduce our facilitators from Huawei. We have David Sanchez, who is the Head of Utilities for Huawei Australia, and Steve Ruskin, who is the Head of Sales and Distribution. So over to you, gentlemen.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Thanks for the introduction. So, firstly, thanks again, Oliver and Tarek, and also Matthew, who joins us from Adelaide. So, hello, Matthew. Regarding introduction, so this is Tarek. To my left here, I have Tarek. He's the Head of Development from FRV. So, welcome, Tarek. Then I have Oliver Hartley over here. He's the Managing Director of EFO. And then I have Matthew Curnow, who's the MD of Sustainable Savings, and he's over there in Adelaide. So welcome everyone. So I thought I'd start off firstly with Tarek. If you can just give us a brief overview of FRV and a little bit about yourself, that'll be good. And then we'll start with Tarek, and then we'll move to Oliver, and then we'll go to Matthew.
Sure. First of all, I'd like to thank Huawei, Mr. Hudson, David, and the rest of the Huawei team for organizing this. Very excited to share views on these topics today. In regards to FRV, FRV is a renewable energy developer, mainly focused on solar. Firstly established in 2006 in Madrid. rolled the first wave of renewable energy in Europe, and from there expanded into the US, Latin America, Middle East, and Australia in 2011. Our first utility solar scale solar plant was built in Australia in 2014. That's the Rayala and the ACT. And since then, we're in the process of commissioning the sixth one, and many more to come.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. About myself, I'm Tarek Al-Sampaila. I'm the head of project development for FRV. I've been with FRV about 6 years now. Currently serving in my position as head of development in Australia for the past 2 years, and before that, head of development in Middle East and Africa.
Thank you, Tarek. Very good. Very good. All right, Oliver.
Yeah, thanks. Lisa, thank you very much for inviting me. Obviously, always a bit strange to have these virtual or semi-virtual conferences, but I think we should still get a lot out of it. So quickly to myself, I've been in solar for 25 years. Started as a researcher, worked for BP Solar, for Q-Cells, and then was managing director, or have been managing director with EFO for the last six years, which I founded. So EFO is an absolute specialized companies in the C&I space. We only work in that space. We don't do any residential. We don't do any utility. And within that C&I space, we're very much focused on large corporate clients. So our flagship projects are projects like the 6 megawatt Brisbane Airport, which I believe is still the biggest C&I project in Australia. Others are big industrial rollouts, like which was made public recently by Aldi, where we have done now way over 200 stores for them. Altogether, over 24 megawatts of solar deployed all across Australia. So design, construction, operation, maintenance, and then as EFO, we're now growing more and more into the asset management side of solar, where we own solar systems ourselves, sell electricity under power purchase agreements, but also start developing more services around energy as a service on site for our corporate clients.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Oliver. Thanks for that update. All right, so Matthew. So are you there, Matthew? If you can just update us a bit of a brief overview of the company and yourself personally, that'd be great. I'll leave it to you, mate. I'll put it over to you.
So I've probably been involved in solar for around 5 to 7 years now. Mainly came from the energy efficiency background into this side of the business. So sustainable savings predominantly focuses on commercial that we use for embedded networking predominantly. We have a residential brand called Energy Buster that does residential installs. I sit on a number of panels for SA Power Networks as well, so including their customer and consultative panel, their residential and business tariff working groups, and also the solar industry reference group. So trying to work with them to best fit and I suppose negotiate between the industry and SAP on the best ways to get connections as smooth as possible for the industry.
Oh, okay, thanks Matthew. Thanks for the update. All right, so what I might do is we'll move it over to David here, David Sanchez, or as I like to refer to him, Aussie Davo.
Aussie Davo.
They call him Aussie Davo now because he likes his surfing and he's living in Manly. He's living the dream. So it's nice to have him on board. He's been a really good attribute here in Huawei. So yeah, comes all the way from Spain.
Yeah.
So David,
thank you, Steve. Thank you, Tarek. Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Matthew, for joining today. We are so happy that you guys join us today for that discussion. Such a key players. And thank you very much to everyone joining remotely from home. So thank you for attending. I hope that you find this interesting. So basically, we divide the discussion in 4 parts. The first part will be the market uptake during and post the pandemic. The second part will be grid connections challenges. The third part will be technology trends in Australia and globally. And finally, the last part will be the recipe for success. So let's move on to the first one, the first part, market uptake during and post the pandemic. And this first question I would like to ask you, Tarek. The numbers say that this year has been quite a difficult year for utility and large solar farms. How do you see the impact of COVID-19 in the utility market in Australia? And especially since FRB already commissioned Gonumbra solar farm in the first part of the year and will commission Winton solar farm in the second half of the year, and you achieve financial closure for Sebastopol, what are the challenges that you guys faced? And let me please highlight, excellent job.
Thanks. Definitely, it's been a very hard year for everyone on a personal level and in terms of business. It is true that the solar developments have kindly slowed down, mainly due to the construction and the travel restrictions. That has been one. Also, it took them some time to get adjusted to the new lifestyle, I would say, that we're all living. And all that in the development cycle and the construction of solar farms, it affected the timeline. So you will see less plants being fully developed, fully reaching financial closes, or fully commissioned in 2020. We're all aware of that. And the pandemic is one reason, of course, and other issues due to connection as well, especially in Victoria, have been causing major delays.
Yeah, definitely. We will get back to this later. Steve?
Yeah, so thanks, Tarek, for that. So, Oliver, so the question to you is, according to the current data that we've seen a decrease in LGC projects, so from 100 kilowatts all the way up to 5 megawatt from last year. So what's your opinion on this, and where do you see an opportunity for this market in the coming years?
Yeah. So generally, there was no doubt a certain slowdown in delivery of projects in that space because of travel restriction and getting to site, and in some cases, obviously down in Victoria, you couldn't even have people on the construction sites anymore. So that certainly stopped some of the work going on. I think it probably depends very much whether the companies were affected strongly or more weakly. Like in our case, most of our clients are clients like Aldi and Woolworths and these big corporates who obviously, like the supermarkets, they had a pretty good ride over the last few months. So that project just continued. We had to adjust quickly and work health and safety in some of the documentation, but otherwise we really could continue continuously or fluidly on all these projects. The projects like the big industrial estates, logistics centers, again, there the whole logistics side is still extremely strong because of the pandemic. Actually, a lot of these markets have actually been very buoyant. So they are, we've seen a big uptake there. A lot of our big corporate clients have made statements on renewable energy targets they want to fulfill, whether it's the Goodmans or Dexes or others. So that has underline good pipeline for projects. No doubt there were some issues on some of the delivery side, as I said, because you can't get there, but overall I'm still quite bullish in that sector actually.
So overall, you're saying, so a lot of the more corporates, your Aldis and your supermarkets and some of the freighting companies, they seem like they've actually gone ahead rather than some of the smaller entities or smaller companies, things like this.
Yeah, definitely. Their planning horizon is much longer.
Yeah.
These big property companies, generally the buildings are planning horizon of 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Everybody understands that behind the meter is still extremely good value proposition, the power behind the meter power. And a lot of these companies have set very ambitious renewable energy targets that they need to be delivered.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for that, Oliver. So, Matthew, can you hear me, mate? Are you there? Yep. Okay, so this is the next question. Those size systems, what are some of the driving factors that are making sales easier for you these days in that sector?
No worries. I'll let you mute so when I get the echo. I think what we've seen is that the overall sort of driver in that is that the system costs have been coming down over time. Like panels have been coming cheaper, and we're getting higher wattage panels, so we can actually fit more in a roof space than we could traditionally. So there's opportunities coming up now that previously weren't available in that smaller type system in that 10 to 30 kilowatt range. We've got a number of business owners now that are kind of, I suppose they're sick and tired of the high energy prices, specifically in SA as well as other states will see when their coal-fired stations start to shut. And they just really want to hedge off their power costs, so they want to put things in place now. So they know they've got a reasonable fixed cost for that power over time. We've also got a number that are looking at batteries either now or in the future. Batteries still in an SME market really only come into play if they've got another driver behind it. The strict ROIs on batteries still a pretty long horizon, but some have other things like medicine cabinets. They want to keep their POS systems up and running, other things in a blackout. And probably finally, we have sort of seen, as was mentioned as well, is that the environmental concerns. So some businesses are just sort of seeing it as a driver to increase their the sort of green credentials, or just see it as the right thing to be doing now.
So Matthew, I thought I'd just continue more on the residential. We'll talk a little bit more, I think about batteries. Later on, we'll address the battery in the C&I. We can get your opinion on that and the residential as well. So just putting the next question forward. So how much do you think the residential market will be affected in the next 6 to 12 months? Considering we're talking about a looming recession, or perhaps we are in a recession, do you believe we'll see an increase in the purchase of cheaper solar systems? So do you think there's going to be an uptake or a further demand for cheaper solar systems moving forward?
It's an interesting one, to be honest, and yeah, maybe Alan Border will be very busy, but we'll wait and see. I suppose what we've found from engaging with the market, and this is mainly the South Australian market, is that around 60% is really price sensitive anyway. So there's a big chunk of the market who predominantly will buy on price no matter what. You can educate them or try to educate them as much as you want, but they're always going to buy on price. In regards to the slowdown, look, solar payback on residential is still such an attractive opportunity for people. I can't really see that slowing down too much. What we did notice with COVID, though, was we actually had really noticeable swings on leads and activities depending on what was happening in Victoria. As the situation got much worse in Victoria, even though it was across the border, and we were pretty good here in South Australia, we actually did see quite big dips. And as confidence started to come back and Victoria was more under control, then we saw the confidence start to come back to the market. So I think COVID's been a bigger driver around those peaks and troughs in the residential market than anything to do with the recession. And that'll probably continue. I think if the COVID stays under control, I think we'll see the confidence stay.
I was just going to say, I think just with everybody working at home, then I think it has driven up a lot of the costs of electricity. So I think you're right there. And in addition to that, I know that the industry has definitely been affected through Melbourne COVID-19 restrictions to stage 4 as well. I think I saw some statistics of going from a 60 megawatt market down to 30 megawatts a month. So 60 megawatts a month down to 30. So I think that it's definitely been impacted more so than Victoria than most other states. So, thanks for that, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew.
Right.
Thank you, Tarek. Thank you, Oliver. So let's move on to the next section, which is basically a key topic for any utility or large solar developer, which is basically the grid connection, challenges, and regulation. First of all, Tarek, since FRB is such an important player for the utility scenario, so first of all, we see that grid connection is facing increasing challenges. So first of all, I would like to know, first of all, what is FRB's view on the market? Second, how can new technologies like storage or hydrogen help both grid connection and financial model? And finally, do you agree with the forecast that say that both technologies, especially storage, will definitely boost in the next 2 to 3 years, going from hundreds of megas to several gigas?
It's no secret that the Australian grid is very long and very thin, and actually one of the longest, if not the longest, in the world.
Yeah.
It's kind of outdated in some parts of the NEM with the eastern states, and this is the main reason what it's causing all these challenges. As a developer and as an investor, being in a very thriving economy like Australia, we need to help in solving these issues. We need to provide support, technical support to the NSPs and AEMO in order to overcome. So we acknowledge these challenges, and we see that it's not possible to develop new grid networks overnight, right? So coming and how that can play with a renewable energy developer is, of course, adding new generators in the right place, developing the right development, and helping the NSPs and AEMO to approve the right projects that will give the right generation, right benefit to the grid, and eventually to the consumer and the end user. Combining that with storage systems, which is the best, it is true that in many aspects, it can support the grid through different technical functions, but it can also create additional value for developers. And the market of the BESS is not fully defined as yet. So over the past years, AEMO has been working very hard in order to define and structure that market, as in other places in the world, like the UK or the States, where they're quite sophisticated in utilizing those services. We've seen a couple of the new markets, the 8 markets, I would say, what they call it, such as the FCAS, that can generate a lot of value for developers, but also for the grid. The frequency control system, what we've seen in South Australia, very successfully done. And with our intention is to bring that, take it to the whole NEM. Answering to the second scale of your question, yes, I see the storage being a must in the next 2 to 3 years, along with any new renewable energy generator, large renewable energy generator. But also in some instances, having standalone storage could also support the NSPs and AEMO on expanding and enforcing that grid. In some instances, there will not be a need to create thousands of kilometers of new lines if we can openly work with the NSPs and openly work with AEMO. And we are trying to do that. And there's been a huge improvement in the last 2 years in terms of the process and the transparency and the communication that we're having with them. So we're trying to structure new and offer new structures that we can work all together on bringing all these benefits.
Okay.
In relation to hydrogen, it's a little bit early for hydrogen, I would say, but it's there. And most important is to see the states being committed to that. We've seen South Australia, they have a plan for 2030. We've seen recently Queensland as well, they launched one. So Australia is perfectly positioned for hydrogen. The resources that are available, and how this can be green hydrogen, of course,
yeah.
And how all the existing gas network can be utilized and the benefit for internal consumption, but then also for exporting.
Correct. Yeah, thank you. That was actually interesting. Actually, there is another point where you guys are also quite experienced, is the fact of finding PPAs or financial closure. It's true that we see financial closure as a big blocker for so many developers, that they claim to have big pipeline, but in the end, they struggle to go through financial closure. Since you guys just achieved that with Sebastopol, if you can share a little bit your opinion on that, that would be very appreciated.
Sure. This is our bread and butter.
Yeah.
So we've been doing this historically in many markets, and in Australia we've done it 7 times so far on a large scale with highest credit rating of takers that the market can have. There are several challenges in other developers not being able to land this kind of PPAs. First of all, is having the project fully developed. In order to have the project fully developed, the permitting is one part, but as I mentioned later, you have to develop the right project in the right place in order to get your connection approvals and connection agreements. And this is the last and most difficult hurdle before having a project shovel ready. Then as FRV, we're always customer oriented, and we're trying to wrap up the best solution for our clients. Being on the PPA side of things, we've proven aggressiveness when it comes to tenders, but also we're quite commercial into expanding collaborations with current off-takers. An example, as you mentioned, Gunumbla was solar farm 70 megawatt AC was commissioned less than a year ago. Our off-taker was Snowy Hydro. Winter solar farm in Victoria is now in early stages of commissioned with Huawei 90 KTL inverters. That was part of the Victorian tender. That was support agreement, basically PPA with the Victorian government. And then we replicated immediately after with Snowy Hydro, second PPA for Sebastopol solar farm 90 megawatt AC, which marks the third project for FRV in New South Wales.
Impressive. Congratulations. Thank you, Tarek. I'm sure that was a topic that is very interesting for our audience. Steve, yes.
Okay, Oliver. Thanks, Tarek. So this question's for all of us. So how challenging are you finding the grid application process in different states with different DNSPs? Also, do you see a number of new requirements being put into the application forms?
Yeah. So as I explained at the beginning and at the introduction, we operate nationwide, so we literally have experience with all the DNSPs, and it's not different from state to state. Even within state, like in New South Wales, is very different whether we try to get written connection approvals for a project within Ausgrid versus Endeavour. Generally, I think the attitude you have to take towards this is that the DNSPs are responsible for the grid stability, right? Under the national electricity rules, that's their task, and that's what they have to deliver. So it's not necessarily that they are opposing solar, but they obviously want to achieve their overall goal. So for us, what has become really important is when we provide our paperwork, our grid applications, that is as absolute top-notch quality in terms of the engineering and the information we provide, and there Huawei is really outstanding in the support that we receive and putting it together. That's very important. Now, rules do change constantly, and I think actually the solar industry is often ahead of what is required. So we have the demand response mode already in all the inverters. The rule was changed in AS 4777, but very few systems are actually being really taken by the DNSPs into their control system yet. It will come, and I think once that has happened, the DNSPs will get a bit more relaxed about their systems because they can control it a bit more. So I think we as an industry need to support that and help the DNSPs in doing that. And it's still going to be a rough ride for the next couple of years until every DNSP really understands the rules and what the inverters actually can do as well. The inverters actually are used in lots of parts of the world for much smarter support than we use here in Australia. And so I hope that change, as I said, another couple of years, but then we'll be able to deploy and get these grid approvals through much quicker.
So yeah, thanks, Oliver. Just speaking about grid approvals, what are you seeing the average timeline from initial application to approval?
That can vary. Honestly, it's how long is a piece of string? It can take a couple of weeks. It can take months and months and months for the big projects. Maybe not as long as the big utility solar farm, but 6 to 9 months can happen when you go into the megawatts type of top solar systems. Yeah.
Are you seeing, is it getting easier? Because we're talking about technology evolving and you're talking about DRM capacities and a few of the other sort of key drivers that you're speaking about. yeah, are you seeing it getting easier, or is it becoming?
Good question. I mean, I think what Tarek said as well, we have to work with the DNSPs, and when the DNSPs understand more the way we as a company approaches and really try to educate, to get the education on both sides, then it can get very fast and approvals get much smoother and more mechanical rather than fight every time.
Yeah, fighting. Yeah, as Tarek said, yeah, I think it's just aligning
Yeah.
the groups and being perhaps the happy medium in the middle and
Correct. Yeah.
the right channels. All right, thanks a lot. So next question again, to Oliver will be, so how was the Bright Thinking Power Station project brought from an idea to reality? And how do you think you'll see this in the future for behind the meter electricity selling to the NEM?
Yeah, so the Bright Thinkers power station concept was developed originally. The original idea came up about a bit over 2 years ago, that we wanted to really fill the industrial rooftop. So often we have a situation where we have a 30, 40, 50,000 square meter roof, and we can only put, or the daytime demand of the client might only warrant a 300-400 kilowatt solar system, but we could put 3-4 megawatts on it. So that really did not gel with us very well. We wanted to solve that problem, and that's why we developed the Bright Thinkers Power Station technology with an ARENA grant, where we are now able to run an urban power station that is operating behind the meter, so selling electricity under a power purchase agreement behind the meter directly to the tenant, because it's the most valuable electricity.
Yep.
But we can also sell a share directly on the wholesale market. So the power station is operating as a registered power station on the market. The technology wasn't available, so that why we developed it, and it's patented now in collaboration with Siemens. And that allows us to completely be flexible on how much solar we sell behind the meter to the tenant under PPA, in front of the meter of the wholesale market, bringing it into corporate PPAs, and all that flexibility. That initially did take quite a while because it was a new concept. It had not been done before. We very early on talked to AMO, placed that concept, got their feedback, made some adjustment to the technology, worked with Endeavour because our first BTPS, the first Bright Thinkers Power Station, is within the DNSP Endeavour. And again, a couple of iterations. They were excellent to deal with. And now, as the technology itself has the approval to operate anywhere on AEMO, on the NEM. Obviously, with each new system, we have to go to the local DNSP and get their approval again. And we see a very big future in that. On this commercial industrial space, we literally see gigawatts of potential, because a lot of the roofs you fly into any Australian airport, you still see a lot of naked roofs. And our mission is really to address these.
Yes. It's a great roofs. Yeah, congratulations. Really
thank you. Yeah.
Did you say, was that one of the first of the kind, or was it?
Oh, it's the first in the world, if you want to take that as a technology we developed here. Now, we obviously think very highly of it. ARENA thought it's worth funding. DHL is the PPA off-taker. That's public knowledge. It's on a Goodman facility. That's public. So the partners were extremely strong in that. And that has, I think, also increased the chance of this new technology actually seeing the light of day.
And GPS, what sort of involvement? Did you have to do some grid modeling, or what happened there?
We didn't do the grid modeling ourselves, and Endeavour is a good DNSP to work with there. Yeah. So they did a lot of the work there, and so from that perspective, that wasn't an issue. We still stay below 5 megawatts. Yeah. So even the large rooftop solar system, I think, are going to be unlikely to go over 5 megawatts. You know, taking Brisbane Airport and these kind of huge industrial embedded networks aside. Yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. Great. Thanks for that. So, thanks, Oliver. Matthew, you still there, mate? You still good? Yep. Thumbs up. Good. So Matthew, as a major operator in South Australia and sitting on a lot of committees over there, can you brief us on where the new rooftop solar requirements are heading in South Australia? Because I know there's been a lot going on in South Australia. So I think just for everybody out there, perhaps if you can just give us a good overview of all the new requirements that have come in through the South Australian government.
Yeah, sure. Look, it's yeah. I know Mark Yates is on the call as well, and it's we got sort of hit with almost a perfect storm. It was really distressing. Probably not as much as for the Victorian industry, so I really feel for them at the moment. But the state government here released 5 consultation papers at the end of the financial year, with 10 days consultation on them, 10 business days. So that's really how interested they were to hear from anyone. They got a report from AEMO, pretty much outlining the risk of system blacks over here again, where the whole network will go down because the interconnect is overloaded. And they responded with these 5 papers. So we had a new standard come in that's already enforced now. So it all sort of kicked in just recently. So it was on low voltage ride-through. So all the inverters have to meet a new standard for low voltage ride-through. So with the Huawei suite, for instance, we can still sell everything here bar the 29.9 now. We do have an exemption on one of those about to go in, but yeah, so there was a number of other industries. So like Fronies, for instance, their whole Galvo brand can no longer be sold or installed in South Australia, along with some others. So yeah, that was pretty dramatic, pretty quick, and that was just one of the papers. So the other one was around a remote disconnection. So the state government wanted to give SAPN and themselves the power to remotely disconnect solar or push it to zero export. So all new solar installed here now has to have that capability. So what we're seeing is that an agent needs to be appointed by us or by the customer to act on their behalf to enact that service. So again, it was a real schmozzle, really rushed. It's still a bit of a mess, but thankfully SA Power Networks then stepped up and offered to be the agent for a number of inverter manufacturers, which I quickly highlighted to Huawei, who then got in contact with them, and Huawei on board with SAPN. So they're going to access directly via an API that all has to be up and running by the end of the year. So if they get a signal from AEMO or from the government or from themselves, they can actually remotely disconnect all of that residential or commercial solar off the grid. There were a number of other papers. So there was another one around metering. So we have new metering requirements. They want to be able to see the solar on a separate register, which created some interesting issues because the initial papers, none of the batteries would have worked in a blackout, which was a bit of an issue. That mostly seems to be resolved now, but even from the Office of the Technical Regulator here, we still have 19 different variations of potential wiring for solar and meters that we have to try and deal with when we're connecting up over here. So we don't get to directly connect them like you do in New South Wales. The energy retailers have their own metering contractors who come and do that. So that creates a real painful situation. So I've already had a number have to go off to the Ombudsman already, where many different metering companies have just shown up and just walked off site saying that we don't even know what to do, so we're just leaving and just not connected the system. So that's created a bit of a problem. The fourth paper was around new tariffs. So energy retailers are now forced to offer a tariff now to encourage people to use the solar, and which is probably a good thing. And the last one, I'll go back. So with the inverter brands that can actually meet that low voltage ride through, there is a list on the Department of Energy and Mining website if anyone needs to access it. And a list of agents is up there as well. So I know Mark Yates is also an agent with one of his technologies for South Australia. And then the last paper was all around flexible exports. So what they've been talking, SA Power Networks have been talking about this for quite some time, is that rather than setting zero export limits or very hard, very low fixed export limits for solar approvals, they're talking about putting it as a flexible export proposal. So their SAPN is selling a trial. There was some media around that. And I believe some's being done interstate as well. So this is coming for everyone in Australia. It's not just going to be a South Australian thing. It's going to hit the rest of Australia fairly shortly, whereby people will be able to opt in. So you can either accept a very low fixed export limit that will be much lower than the 5 kilowatts per phase that we have now, but I'm not allowed to tell you what it is yet. I checked with SAPN and they said no. Or you can go on a flexible export arrangement, which for some people may actually put them in a better solution or situation, I should say. So you can be anywhere from 0 to 10 kilowatts per phase. So if you were on a current 5 kilowatt per phase, but you had an 8 or a 9 kilowatt solar system, or even a 10 kilowatt solar system with 2 inverters on a phase, you may actually be able to even export more under this flexible export arrangement, but that would be the risk you would have to take. The other interesting thing that this is now bringing around for the industry is that it's basically mandatory now for every system to have an internet connection. So whereby installers sometimes don't like setting it up to the monitoring platform or just install them and leave it all up to the customer. That's now the installer's requirement and obligation to make sure that's all set up and configured prior to leaving site, or they can't turn the system on. The only way around that currently for things like holiday shacks and those sorts of things where there may be no internet, or they're going to, the cost of putting internet in is going to outweigh the benefit of any export, is to go with that very low fixed export limit that hopefully will be announced in the next week or two, and then that'll be common knowledge for everyone.
Probably a last question, just a quick one, was so what's your opinion? I mean, do you think that is this really going to help the network and the grid? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. So there's been a couple of things going on as well. So SAPN also got some funding to go and upgrade quite a number of substations now to help with the increased voltage. And we're already seeing overruns and negative flows here in South Australia. We've already had it this year already. So once we start to get into a bit more spring and summer, it's only going to get more and more prevalent. Possibly the interconnector to New South Wales is going to help with that. Our issue is we're going negative. So we've got that much solar with not the demand in South Australia. We've got too much. We can't use it, and the interconnector's full. We can't even export it. So that's the problem of what happens to all that power. So fast tracking the interconnectors in New South Wales is definitely going to help. And the things going in place now, I mean, it's inevitable. There was no other way around it. And they needed to do something to help stabilise the grid. They probably should have acted earlier rather than trying to rush it through in a few weeks. But at the end of the day, it's going to provide us a more stable grid, hopefully in South Australia, and then we can keep installing plenty of solar. Otherwise, their other option, which they did threaten the industry with, was a moratorium on installing any solar in South Australia.
It was really good. All right, so thanks Matthew. So I'll move you back over to David, and we can keep going with some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Tarek. Thank you, Oliver, for this section. That was very interesting. Let's move on now to the third part, technology trends. So for me, I think, and for all the audience, this is an exciting topic. So it's true that our PV industry moves so fast, way faster than other industries. We have new innovations coming, new technologies. We discussed about storage, hydrogen, but I want to stop for a second on bifacial modules. So bifacial modules already last year in 2019, I think they had a market share around 20% globally. So are definitely getting more popular in Australia and globally. And first of all, I want to understand, Tarek and Oliver, your opinion on this. First of all, if you see bifacial modules becoming mainstream solution in Australia and globally. And second, if you see clear benefits on using multi-MPPT inverters with bifacial module, especially to minimize the mismatch losses.
Until the new technology arrives, I believe bifacial will be the new mainstream. We've seen this since the 2000s. Yeah. Thin film, polycrystalline, monocrystalline, black glass, bifacial, and every time the technology improves, and that's the most important thing, right? Yes, I see it for the right application, being the right choice, and combined with the right inverter, it even maximizes further the yield, and eventually the investment value, and what is being extracted from this investment, which is competitive clean energy.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, actually we can discuss probably next time, but yeah, for me, I think this is a very hot topic. This is a clear topic, because in the end, we are talking about having hundreds more of MPPTs on site to really minimize the mismatch losses. I think that would make a difference. And actually there is no surprise that with the increase of bifacial modules globally, we also see a clear increase of multi-MPPT topology inverters. So actually they are quite linked, and there is a clear connection. Oliver, you want to add maybe some comments there?
Bifacials? Well, bifacials on a roof is limited.
Yeah.
And if it's we are building the SolarShare community solar farm in Canberra. That's a ground mount system where we use bifacial. So we use bifacial, but on the roof we still have to see whether they are. We're not going to see the benefits that you see on a ground mount system. Multi MPPT, absolutely. The more the better for us at the moment. Actually, although when you think about these industrial roofs, you think of big empty spaces, which is true most of the time, but then you have the HVAC system there, or you have a step in the roof or something, and then having the multi MPPTs there are certainly of benefits, yeah. And that's one reason why we've switched a lot of the Aldi stores actually in the last phase over to Huawei, because there might have been some local shading which we needed to counter for.
Fantastic, thank you. And there is another topic that is actually quite hot also these days, is digitalization. So for Huawei, our perspective is clear. Okay, so digitalization will become a cornerstone of every single solar farm in the close future. Why? Because this is the only way to reduce LCOE, especially the one-end side. So especially, we think that the pandemic has reinforced this message. So we need more digitalization. The energy transition can only be complete with a digital transformation. So how do you think digitalization can help to increase your profitability, your return of investment in your solar farm, and make the solar farm more bankable, especially in the O&M side?
Correct. So the development, financing, construction, and connecting a solar farm is half the story. The other half is running it for 25, 30, 35 years, right? And this is where the challenge is, especially when it comes to times like this. Digitalization makes a huge difference. Optimizing the return of an investment through optimizing the OPEX is key. And we're just all the time scouting there for new products, new applications that we can apply to our new solar farms, but also into upgrade old solar farms that could help us in optimizing that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Derek. Thank you very much.
Okay. Like Pensy with this flyer.
There we go. No, it's on listen. All right. Thanks, David. Thanks for that. It's good. Okay, so next question I'll put over to Oliver again. So where are you seeing the rapid increase of technology, which is constantly changing the current PV environment, and where do you believe the biggest changes will occur?
Yeah. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I've been in the industry for 25 years, so I've seen quite a lot of changes. I think the biggest change we see now going forward is actually how we use the solar system, particularly in the C&I space. In the past, it was literally a dumb solar system on the roof and it's just very passive. Whilst we now see the shift into actually turning these solar systems into active generators, that interact with the site, interact with the network, digitalization, that in our case, the whole industry 4.0, everything gets more digitalized, that we really become part of the whole energy service on site, interacting with how the site is run, demand management, battery storage, load shifting, peak shaving, all these things. I think that is really what's going to drive the development over the next couple of years, and that's going to be very, very interesting. And then inverter will play a key role in driving that development.
Yeah, it's actually to the point where technology is evolving so fast, it's almost hard to keep up with. But fortunately, you have companies like Huawei come along who are tech companies, so you will get, they will be at the forefront of technology.
Yeah, I think maybe just get at in our case, it's really rather than looking at individual system, to really look at it as a whole fleet of systems. So we operate, monitor and maintain hundreds and hundreds of systems all across Australia, large commercial system, and it's really how to operate those effectively over a long period of time, 20, 30 years.
Okay. That's good.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks for that. So so the next question will be for both Oliver and Matthew as well. So I'll maybe go to Oliver first on this question, and then Matthew, you can answer it straight after. So customers are becoming yield conscious. We're already seeing multi-string or 1 to 2 MPPT inverter manufacturers who are against multi-MPP inverters. They are now launching similar products in the C&I market. Do you see that multi-MPPT inverters with higher reliability is the way to go? Is the way to go moving forward into the C&I market?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we have shifted a lot of our project over to multi-MPPTs, and it certainly helps. And generally, I think what we find, and clients understand that more and more, if the solar system is well designed, well constructed, and maintained, the reliability of the system is extremely high. Yeah. So for some of our clients, we have quarterly meetings on performance where we document the whole fleet of assets they have and show them how close we are to the initially forecasted value. And in particular, if they have more than just an individual system, on some clients, we are in an accuracy rate of plus minus 2%. It's remarkable.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. It's good. Good. All right. Thanks for that. Matthew, did you get the question, or do you need me to repeat it?
All good, mate. Got it. So that's fine. Yeah, I think I'd add on to that. So it really comes down to the site that you're installing at. Some are still probably fine for the single MPPT or dual. But I suppose one of the advantages we've seen from having, quite a number of MPPTs to install on in commercial is that ongoing O&M and the maintenance. So especially if you've got a fault at a system, to be able to quickly track it down to a much smaller set of panels on one tracker makes that much easier. And so you're only potentially losing a smaller section of that system rather than losing a fairly large chunk of 50 to 100% of everything on that inverter. So from that point of view on reliability, I think it's really good. In the smaller space, in the residential, we've seen a bit of a niche around even inverters with up to 3 trackers. So with that market, people wanted to sort of really maximise their roof space and have an east-northwest system. So they've pretty much got power generating all the way through the day to feed their batteries, their own consumption, and potentially charging electric vehicles as they sort of go down that track as well.
Okay, thanks, Matthew. All right, so again, the next question, I'll just put it out to both Oliver and Matthew again. So how important is digitalisation for your customer base? With the integration of AI features in the inverter, do you think it opens another revenue stream, like, for instance, an O&M contracts that I think, Oliver, you mentioned a little bit about O&M. So what are your thoughts there?
I think definitely with inverters getting smarter and smarter and having more signals and coming up, if the inverter understands better how that particular site operates and manages faults or phantom faults better, then I think that will make our life much easier in operating the systems, particularly when we have big fleets of systems to operate. So I guess that goes hand in hand with providing a better, more reliable service, what you said, better yield. Uptime generally is never really an issue, or very rarely an issue. So it's more really making sure that the performance is there where you promise to the client.
Okay, that's cool.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew, are you right for that question as well?
All good. So definitely we make sure all our systems, and now that they have to have an internet connection regardless in South Australia, go up on the Fusion portal or on relevant platforms. So that's really important. I think it helps the customer not only have visualization of that, but helps us check the performance and do remote fault finding on those systems as well. And it's great because Huawei can actually dial in, obviously, and see those systems with permission as well. Things like remote firmware updates, all those sorts of things are really important. And, I suppose for a lot of the people on here today who are in the resi space, I mean, this is the great time of year where you get those calls from customers being really angry because their system's not performing because they ignore the expected yield curves that you give them, and they've been through winter and run their heaters, and then are wondering why their solar's not performing as they thought it would. So to have that at the touch of your fingers is really important to answer those questions as well.
So just the last questions, two questions, or the last question again to Oliver and Matthew just in this section. So again, we touched just initially on storage, on batteries. So I just wanted to put forward to Oliver. So the importance, how is the importance of storage in the C&I, in your case, C&I and SME market, or yes, more C&I market in the next 2 to 3 years? Where do you see it?
So in our case, because we mainly work with the large corporate clients, they generally negotiate their electricity rates every few years. So storage really just needs to compete with financial benefits. Everything we do is driven from a commercial perspective. So it's still a bit of a stretch for us to make the economics work for a storage system in the C&I space. There's a lot of hype around FCAS and other value-add systems that we're looking at. We're doing battery storage. We're trialing it, and I think I see similarities to maybe solar 3-4 years ago. So the first solar system with Aldi we did in 2015. It was a 100 kilowatt system. It was signed off by the CEO directly. And now we're rolling them out, as I said in one of the articles, 100 Aldi stores and 100 business days. And I think that's what we see in the battery storage. Some clients go forward and said, okay, let's look at a side. Let's put a smaller battery system in there. Let's see how it behaves, what the benefits are. We're not going to decide purely on the economics, but more on the learning, getting ready to make that step, let's say in a couple of years, to really roll it out.
To trial it first initially.
That's right, yeah. And we personally as EFO obviously think that storage will be extremely important in these urban power stations. The Bright Thinkers power station, this kind of approach where we want to turn these urban power stations into really dispatchable, fully market participating power stations.
So as it stands at the moment, the ROIs seem like they're blowing out, and it doesn't, from a commercial perspective, is that the
blown out? Yes, they are not that attractive.
Not attractive as, let's say,
not like in residential. It's much more because what the electricity rates are obviously much higher in residential versus commercial.
Yeah, no, that's good. All right, thanks, Oliver. So Matthew, what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I'd agree. I mean, even in residential, for a lot of batteries, it's sort of still that 6 to 8 years return on investment, if you're strictly looking at that. So a lot of people just want to be part of that battery wave, so the first movers. So same as SME and C&I, really where it comes down to is if they've got other key reasons to have a battery or sort of a larger UPS on some of their systems. So what we find, it might be a key fridge or a point of sale system that they want to keep running in a blackout, something on those lines. So there definitely is a niche market for it, but it's definitely not mainstream and probably won't be for some time until batteries probably halve in cost again and double in storage.
You've been working obviously over in South Australia there with a lot of committees, as we mentioned. So VPPs, I think, are a big word, or have been for the last couple of years. Are you seeing, what are you seeing at the moment with VPPs and how they proceeding into the South Australian network?
Yeah, definitely. So there's been quite a number of different VPPs running. So we've got like the Son and Flat, they do their sort of different variation. There's the Tesla VPP that we do a fair bit of. Yeah, look, customers find it reasonably attractive. I know AGL push theirs pretty hard too. To get that sort of upfront discount off the cost of the system, that really drives most people. But a lot of them don't like to be locked in for long periods of time. So I think we're seeing the sort of longer, like the AGL were trying to get people for 5 years at the start. So I think we'll probably see that start to back off a little bit. So it just comes down to the length of time. And to be honest, a lot of people wouldn't even understand it. and that's probably being a little bit brutal, I guess, but probably honest, in the fact that they just look at it and go, hey, I'll get a couple of $1,000s off my battery up front by signing up to this power company, and it's not going to cost me any more. Great, do that. So that's, yeah, probably what it is. People find it attractive really for the upfront discount rather than understanding it for the majority.
Yeah, saving the initial capex. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Thanks, Matthew. I'll hand it over to David then.
Thank you, Tarek. Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Matthew. So yeah, moving on to the last part. I know, unfortunately, you guys are enjoying that much, but there will be a next one. So okay, moving on to the last part. So basically, the recipe of succeeding in such a challenging environment. So we have 3 key players here with us. So we would like to know your opinion and what is the secret behind this success. So first of all, to Tarek, FRV is definitely one of the most successful developers in Australia, also globally. So what is the secret behind that success? And second, to you personally, since you've been developing overseas, Middle East, Europe, also here in Australia, what are the main challenges that a developer has to face here in Australia?
It's a secret recipe. Not
So you want to share? Not here.
After a few drinks or something.
Maybe later. But it's simple at the same time. I think the commitment of our shareholders has been key since the beginning. The focus and the vision of our senior management as well has played a key role in that. And it comes down to the team. And the motivated people and the individuals, and these are the people that are making it happen each and every time. On the other hand, there's also important to, like in any other market, in any other space, develop the right project, the right product to fill in the right gap in that market and deliver the needs of the customer. And I would say that's
as secret behind the success. Okay.
I can share more things.
Okay. Thank you, Tarek. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tarek. So I love us. So EFO has an excellent record for, as you mentioned, for a lot of portfolio and corporate customers. So why do you see such a high level of success for these types of customers that you've managed to bring on board?
Yeah, good question. I mean, when I started EFO, often people said, oh, it's not what you know, but who you know. And I thought, really, maybe there's a different business model, that it's actually good to know what you need to do, and then people will get to know you. And that's the approach EFO took. So it is a team of geeks. We've all been in the industry for a very long time, absolute expert in engineering, project management. And that's probably an approach that in the past wasn't that often seen in the C&I space. A lot of the C&I space was still served by companies that had more sales mentality, go in, quick buck, and get out again. But we have built long-term relationships. Like I said earlier, with Aldi, we've been working for them for 5 years and still going strong. Other clients, similar, for years and years, we've built relationships. But also not just with the clients, it's also with the suppliers, building strong relationship, particularly when in these crisis modes where you really have to help each other a bit and lean on each other, but also our installation partners across Australia. We have built very strong relationships with them. We have been successful. They have been successful together with us. They have bought into our industrial approach to delivering these projects, into our processes, documentation, cloud platforms that we have developed. So all that has contributed to the success. And then obviously trying to develop the right products for the client is probably now more important than ever, because so much is changing so quickly.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And Tarek also mentioned about team as well. And I think first-hand meeting a lot of your engineering team, Matthias, and the rest of the team do a fantastic job. And I think, if you are to move forward and to get portfolio customers and corporate customers, you need a good team behind you.
Yeah.
And you've got a great engineering team. So I think that's
and just retention. You know, a lot of people have been with very few turnaround on staff we have internally. That's really
that's another key element.
Really
and project managers that can handle the pressure, when they need to. So no, that's good. So thanks for that. All right, Matthew. So last question, mate. So Matthew, from your experience in the current business environment, please explain the importance of team building, also talent retention, flexible work environment, motivational measures, as well as some really sharp business maneuvers as well.
Cool. So you want all the secrets like Tarek said no to, but that's okay. But really, this time's been really challenging, I think, for everyone. And to do a lot of these things has been almost impossible, to be honest. So, you know, trying to do team building and motivational measures and things like that has been a challenge in COVID. You know, again, luckily here, we really only had to go down to half-staffed offices and things like that to get the proper spread, and we're pretty much, you know, been back to full offices for some time now. Things I found, Yatesy, no problem. Things I found important have been, I've been doing a lot of regular email updates to the staff. So just telling them what the situation is, how the business is dealing with that, how we're tracking, and sort of what we're seeing in the market, just to keep them informed, so they're sort of not forming their own ideas in their heads and getting really stressed or concerned about that. I made a personal point of constantly going around and asking all of our staff, or calling them and saying, how are you doing? How are you coping with everything? We did some strange things around having to get toilet paper. So we got some toilet paper delivered into the office and some hand sanitizers and things like that people could take home if they were running short and they just couldn't buy it elsewhere, just to take that stress off of the staff as well. So that was really around that sort of feeling of team and family and motivation. I suppose it's more about the support through the trying times, and there's still a little bit of that going on, but not so much here now. Most of our systems that we have for business, they're all cloud-based anyway, and most of our staff can work remotely. Definitely our sales team do, and pretty much anyone else can work from home if needed. So we transitioned through that COVID process fairly easily. We did have some federal funding that we already had in place prior to COVID to do some internal changes around our software and our processes that we had underway. So we really just accelerated some of those programs to bring forward those tools, because we could no longer do face-to-face appointments. So everything moved to phone or Zoom appointments. And from that, we actually have identified that some of those things actually worked quite well. So we're going to now keep parts of that change, even though the majority has gone back to how it was. We're actually going to keep some of those changes and opportunities that we found by those forced moves going forward.
So there's been some positives as well out of the COVID-19 situation. You're saying you've started to manage and reinvent perhaps yourself and the company a little bit, so to speak. Cool. All right. Thanks. Thanks, Matthew. So is it?
So we finished our 4 parts. So first of all, I would like to thank Tarek, Oliver, and Matthew. We still have the Q&A and what everybody's waiting for, the lucky draw. So back to Lisa for the lucky draw. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, hi everyone, me again. We've been overwhelmed asking for a little more time for people to be able to fill out the survey to be able to go into the lucky draw. So I will direct you again to a red banner at the top of your screen. That in there will appear a link to the lucky draw. You've got a couple of minutes to be able to do that, and then immediately afterwards we're going to go into the Q&A, because we do have some questions that we will be addressing. So as a filler again, I'm going to showcase the fabulous Huawei Watch GT. For those that missed it earlier, compatible on both Android and iOS devices. Does everything a smartwatch should do and more. It's supported by 3 satellite positioning systems, GPS, GLONASS, and Galileo. So it's more accurate, faster, than any other on the market. Just made that bit up, but I'm sure it's true. Of course, all of your emails, calls, all appear on your wrist. So for the busy salesperson in the field or the executive running from meetings, not only does it have your sporting needs covered, but also your business as well. So that's all I've got for now on that. So I hope you've all managed to complete the survey. So I'm now going to hand back to the boys to continue the Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks again, Lisa. That was,
Thank you very much.
really good. Now, so I think we've got the Q&A session about to start up. So I'm going to shortly have some questions appear up on the screen to my left. Daniel Ball, does your panel find bifacial panels work well with Huawei inverters? Experiences? Maybe that's
probably the most recent experiences, a couple of 100 megawatts. But yes, in Australia, I would say, but elsewhere in the world, we've seen over and over again the combination of bifacial with Huawei, the KTL series specifically. In terms of installation, I would say it was very easy. It reduced the BOS significantly. In terms of yield, it maximized the yield. There's no question. In combination also with the trackers, significantly by significant percentage. And as well in terms of operation maintenance and the OPEX, needless to say that it's so easy to replace in case of a fault, rather than having a whole unit of 4 or 5 megs down
or whatever
for a few days. Correct.
Yeah.
So plug and play. Yeah.
Actually, if I may, I would like to add. So basically, actually, the logic behind the performance with Huawei inverters and bifacial modules is quite easy for an engineer. So basically, assuming we have 2 blocks, 5 megas, with a non-multi-PPT topology inverter, you will have, let's say, 400, 500 strings, 1 PPT. With our solution, you will have 400 strings, 300 PPTs. When it comes to bifacial, albedo is the key part. It increases the uncertainty hugely. Only with a huge number of MPPTs, you can really take the most out of every bifacial model.
Very good. Okay. So next question. So again, probably another question for Tarek. A question on market trend. How will the development of REZ going to change the landscape of utility scale solar in Australia?
Yeah, the renewable energy zones is a great initiative by each state that has been launched many years ago, and they're reforming it every now and then. Recently, the new renewable energy zones were announced in New South Wales and Queensland. Of course, the initiative is to back economic growth beside the renewable energy transition to a net carbon of Australia and going away from dirty energy. It is no secret again that renewable energy doesn't grow in the cities or next to the cities. It has to be in rural areas, and that stimulates also the growth, maintaining the youth in rural areas, but also creating jobs during construction and during the long term. It certainly keeps the developers on focus in terms where are the targeted areas. The renewable energy zone, they come and they are announced by the government, but in collaboration with the NSPs and AIMO. So in the backseat, before doing all this, there are some studies that have been done. There are some discussion, collaboration between these stakeholders in order to facilitate an easier planning application with the local councils, or even connection process with the NSPs. It's not always optimized, as we've seen in the West Murray Zone and what happened in Northwest Victoria or in Southwest New South Wales, but certainly it has been improving in the past 2-3 years.
Thank you, Tarek. Thank you.
Thanks, Tarek. Okay. David?
Yeah, how Huawei deals with system trend frequency issues. Oof, this we could be talking for a while. So I'm happy to reply on any of these technical concerns. You just send me guys an email. We can discuss anytime because this is a hot topic. Yeah, we can discuss long time. Actually, my friend Edmund, call me tomorrow and we can discuss.
Matthew. Okay. For Matthew, what do you think about the South Australian new smart inverter policy? Any challenges to publish the new smart inverters?
Okay, any challenge to publish the new smart inverters? Look, I'm not sure what they mean by publish. So they're up on the Department of Energy and Mining website. So there's definitely lists there. And it's really come down to the inverter manufacturers. So some have found it challenging or didn't want to pay to get their inverters accredited. So they pretty much just can no longer be sold or installed in SA. So yeah, I can send the links through if you'd like to Huawei to distribute out to anyone who's interested, or I can post them somewhere.
Okay, so next question. Can you advise if, when is Huawei Smart ESS battery available in Australia and at what price? When is available? We're looking for availability, I believe, I've been told, in December. So perhaps shipments in December, and so availability into the market, maybe January, I would say. Regarding pricing, it hasn't been fully determined yet, so we're still waiting for the pricing to be confirmed. Yep.
Huawei is also bringing the storage solution for utility next year.
So the first one is obviously the residential solution for batteries. As I said, probably more like January now. But again, yeah, we'll come back to you with pricing to your local distributor. Oh. Question to IFO. Okay, question to IFO. Are you seeing more behind the meter selling to the market, to the market projects coming along?
So if this, I'll take this question as sort of the PPA, behind the meter PPA. Is that how you interpret?
Oh, yeah, that's how I did. Yeah, probably behind.
So that's obviously a big question. PPAs have been around for a long time. Many companies have tried it for a long time, and a lot of companies have failed.
Sun Edison.
Yeah, they can name lots more. We obviously, within EFO, within the group of EFO, there's EFO Asset Management that we believe is that there will PPAs will come, and more. So there are PPAs there now, but there's still a lot of standard EPC, so design construction projects, where the client just wants a solar system and he pays for it. But going forward, particularly in the environment where you have a tenant and a landlord, PPA makes a lot of sense. Because the tenant just wants cheaper electricity. They don't necessarily want to own the solar system. The landlord is not the beneficiary of the electricity, so why should they put the capital up? So I think there is a model where this kind of selling behind the meter actually can solve a lot of the problems. And with now projects getting bigger and bigger, I think clients in the past, particularly our clients, 100 kilowatt system, doesn't really register on the big developments of maybe $100 million. But if you now talk about 2-3 megawatt systems, that is quite a bit of money. So we think there's going to be a trend where we see more of those PPAs. So EFO Asset Management, owning these assets, I think is going to be one of a growing vehicle within the group. Yeah.
Okay.
I hope I answered that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
definitely.
thank you. That's good.
Thank you, Lindy.
Okay. So when would the AI integrated first inverter be released by Huawei as disclosed in the last report? AI integrated first inverter by Haida. So you've got any feedback on this? Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah. So so all the AI integrated inverters have now been so they're now into the market. So the new L1 series, for instance, all the residentials inverters have now been integrated AI technology. In addition to that, we do have the commercial inverters as well, which has the AI integration. And all of the C&I inverters are the same. So, yeah.
Actually, it's important to highlight that AI is part of the digitalization that Huawei is bringing to the market. Not only every single generation of our inverters includes some AI. Okay, next generation will be full AI. But for example, the present generation does some very nice feature like the integration of the tracker with our inverters, and this is due to a self-learning and AI. Again, we can discuss further, but again, AI is part of the core value of Huawei inverters.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Last one. Okay.
Yeah, last one.
David, do you want to do this?
Yeah, to FRB, why don't we see string inverters using solar farm if they are more beneficial? Give us time, mate. Give us time. Tarek, your opinion here?
I see inverters being used, as I said, in the right application, in the right location, for the right needs and the right product. Yes, it is excellent, and as it's being improved, we will see it even more and more.
Here, let me please also add, because this is a very important topic. Let me please highlight, Huawei is #1 brand in every single region in the world. Latam, Europe, Middle East, APAC, Japan. The only region where we are not #1 is United States, and these are for political reasons. Where the discussion is about technology, Huawei is the leader. So yes, in Australia, we are not #1 yet. Why? Because the developments take 3 years here. We arrive only 2 years here. Wait 2 years, and Huawei will be #1 brand, as it is in every single region in the world.
Thank you. Thanks, David.
I think we finished. We have now back to Lisa again for the lucky draw.
Lucky draw.
Okay. Well, first of all, I must thank Tarek, Oliver, and Matthew for your time today, and also to David for facilitating. Hudson, you've been so generous with your time today. I don't know about everybody else, but I've learnt a great deal. My starting base was low, but amazing, really incredible. So I hope everybody has really enjoyed this session today. So yes, we're now up to the lucky draw, and I believe we have some technology that you'll see on your screen. So winner number 1 is going to be lucky draw is spinning. You are the lucky winner of watch number 1. Okay, second winner is Vincent. Congratulations to you. And our final winner is Andrew. Congratulations. Now we will be in touch with all of the winners and organise to get their fabulous watch out to them. Well, that concludes the session for today. On behalf of the Huawei FusionSolar team, thank you for your time this afternoon. We truly do hope you found the session of value. We are looking to host another one of these sessions in the future, and really do look forward to the opportunity of sharing some time with you again. So have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.